You're talking to the Rolex wearing, diamond ring wearing, kiss stealing, wheeling dealing, limousine riding, jet flying, son of a gun, and I'm having a hard time holding these alligators down. Woo!
G5 Jeff TV, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button. Please share this video. Support your boy. Support good content at all times. Now, one of the most talked about guys in boxing is Chris Eubank Jr. He's coming off of a loss against George Groves in the World Super Series tournament at 168 pounds. And yes, I completely went off on Chris Eubank Jr. like I had money on him in the fight. And I said he may be the biggest fraud in boxing. I still believe that to this day. But that doesn't mean that he's not a good fighter. Like, he has all the attributes to be great in terms of physical talent. But I just question the boxing IQ. You know what I'm saying? It's like if a handyman has every single tool in the toolbox, but he only know how to use 2 or 3 of them, then what's the point in you having all those tools in the toolbox? That's how I feel about Chris Eubank Jr. But do I think he can bounce back? Yes, I think he can bounce back. Do I think he's one of the more gifted guys physically in the sport? I would say top 10 in terms of just pure physical ability. Absolutely. I was a huge fan of his father, Chris Eubank Sr. He was an absolute beast inside of the ring. And it's hard for a son to follow the great legacy that their father has created. And Chris Eubank Jr. has to rebuild. He has to rebuild. And the reason why I said I gave him the fraud title is because he was talking as if he was going to be great. It's kind of similar to Adrian Broner. Adrian Broner said that he was going to be the next Floyd. Like, you can't say that and then in the next breath say, it don't matter if I win or lose, y'all still going to come and see me. That's not the narrative that you said. Chris Eubank Jr.'s narrative and Chris Eubank Sr.'s narrative was Chris Eubank Jr. is one of the best fighters in the world. There's not anybody he's not capable of beating. And it's good to have that confidence, no doubt. It's good to have that confidence. But when you take 2 losses in the 2 fights, 2 step-up fights, it gives us, the fans, us, the critics, even the people that support Chris Eubank Jr., legitimate questions about the future. So the fact that we know that Chris Eubank Jr. has to rebuild, he has to make us believe that he is that dude. First thing we got to figure out is, where is he going to be fighting? Is he going to be fighting at 160? Or is he going to be fighting at 168? And what caliber fighter is he going to be fighting at 160 or 168? I'm going to answer this question from a fighting career standpoint and a business standpoint. From a fighting standpoint and a business standpoint, I think he should go down to 160. I think he should go down to 160 on all levels. He's a small super middleweight because he's not a super middleweight. Like, he's a middleweight. And to be honest with you, he probably could make 154 if he wanted to. To be perfectly honest with you, he probably could make 154. But for the sake of the conversation, I think he should continue his career at 160 pounds. Part of being in the boxing game is to be at a weight that you're comfortable at and not at a weight where you're going to be overmatched in terms of weight differential. 160 just offers more options for him at his natural weight. offers way more options. Now, we know at 160, he can't face the killers at 160. He can't face the Gennady Golovkins. He would get knocked out. He can't face the Billy Joe Saunders again. He would get outclassed again. He can't face Canelo Alvarez. Contaminated meat or no contaminated meat, he's not beating Canelo Alvarez at 160. You look at Jamal Charlo. He loses to Jamal Charlo. Demetrius Andrade. He probably loses to Demetrius Andrade. Probably loses to Danny Jacobs. Chris Eubank can't beat anybody that's in the top 10 right now at middleweight. So from a boxing standpoint, 160 just has more guys that he can fight where he can kind of rebuild his confidence. And when you guys are listening to this is not to bash Chris Eubank Jr. This is being realistic in terms of his path back to where he needs to be. He needs to take at least 3 fights against guys that he is favored against to not only win those fights, but to work on those things during those fights. Because the thing with boxers, they go into the gym and they do everything right. They do everything technically right. They hitting the pads right. They doing all these tricks and stuff on the bag and on the pads and everything. And when you get into the ring, you don't see any of that. You don't see any of that. Everything they do in the gym stays in the gym. They don't apply any of that stuff from the gym in a fight. And you see Chris Eubank Jr. in the gym. He's amazing in the gym. The way he worked the pads, the bag, even sparring. It looks great. But none of that means nothing if you're not gonna take any of that into the ring in a real fight. So he needs to take fights with guys that are tough guys, but he's able to beat or have a legitimate shot of beating. And I mentioned this before, but I feel like I need to mention it again because people kind of got offended the last time I said that Chris Eubank should fight certain people. But I'm going to mention it again. Chris Eubank needs to fight a couple of guys at 160 that's going to, that has a name, but is going to give him some competition. Okay? You have guys like Curtis Stevens. Curtis Stevens and Chris Eubank Jr., that's a good matchup. That's a good matchup. Now, I know I said before that he wouldn't beat this guy, but I actually thought about it, and it's a good fight. Chris Eubank and David Lemieux, that's a good fight. That's a winnable fight for Chris Eubank. It's a winnable fight. You take a guy like, if you want to give him, let me see. You can give him a Gabe Rosado. Give him a Gabriel Rosado. That's a winnable fight for Chris Eubank Jr. Like, that's a winnable fight. You understand what I'm saying? So there's guys at 160 that he can face that would be a good look for him. There's some really good guys that he can face. There's a Willie Monroe Jr. That's a winnable fight for him at 160. That's a winnable fight. There's a lot of guys he can face at 160, but he has to pick a weight and stay there. And he needs to pick a certain mid-level competition at least for the next 3 fights, possibly 4, for him to get back to where he needs to be as a fighter. At this point, he has all the physical ability. He has the hand speed. He got the power. He has the pizzazz. He has the charisma. He has it all. He just needs to work on his boxing craft. He has to work on his boxing craft. You know what I'm saying? And then there's a lot of guys at 154 that could be coming up to 160, and he can go pay them a visit. He can go pay them a visit. There's plenty of things he can do at 160. So even though I think it's a fraud job in terms of him being promoted as one of the best guys in boxing, I do think he is a player in boxing. And I do want to see him succeed. I just want to see the people that is controlling his moves to make the correct moves. And the first thing is to address where he's going to fight. And if you ask G5 Jeff TV, he should fight at middleweight. He should fight at 160. The opponents is there. The money is there. And Chris Eubank is not an old guy, so you can be a little patient with him and find the right fights, the right opponents for Chris Eubank Jr. We see that you can't put him up against a pure boxer that moves around and is really slick. Like, you can't put him up against that type of guy. Now, I know I mentioned Willie Monroe Jr. You could say that he's that type of a fighter, but he doesn't have no crack. He don't have no cracks. So Chris Eubank could legitimately win that fight. But the thing you realize about Chris Eubank Jr. is that it's not good for him to fight at 168. And he can't fight the pure boxer that can move. You know those two things about Chris Eubank Jr. So they need to match him up correctly against the right guys. But y'all let me know what y'all think in the comment section of where Chris Eubank Jr. should continue his career. Should he continue it at middleweight 160 or super middleweight 168? Y'all let me know what y'all think in the comment section. G5 Jeff TV. Hit the subscribe button. Hit the like button. Please share this video. Support your boy. Support good content at all times. Appreciate y'all. Peace.